Think about what you're wearing right now. Your socks, maybe your jacket. Where did those materials actually come from? Often, the real story involves, well, mass production, lots of chemicals, really complex global supply chains. It's kind of hidden, isn't it? And with so much textile waste out there and this huge demand for sustainability, you have to ask, how do we get beyond just less bad materials? How do we find textiles that are genuinely cleaner, safer, and, far more responsible? Well, that's the exact challenge a Canadian company called Zylotex is tackling head-on. So today we're doing a deep dive into the source material about them. They're trying something pretty revolutionary, using a very old crop, but in a new way, right here in Canada.
That's right. And we're really focusing on the how. The sources we've got lay out Zylotex's plan to build a completely Canadian supply chain for what are called regenerated cellulose fibers. And the interesting part is the combination. They're taking locally grown Canadian hemp and pairing it with a really advanced, innovative process called Lyocell. The goal here seems to be speed, efficiency, and deep sustainability, all based domestically.
Okay, let's start with the visionary. The sources point to Lilia Lawson, the founder and chief technology officer. She started out as a researcher in Edmonton. Right, yeah, exactly. And her core idea, it sounds simple maybe, but it's quite profound. Take hemp, which Canada already grows, and build a modern, high-value textile industry around it.
Something Canada hasn't really had in the same way before.
And what's the driving force behind this? Is it just about making fabric?
Well, according to the sources, it's much bigger than that. They're very clear they want to build the next generation of sustainable textiles, not just a slight improvement. So they're aiming really high from the start. The benchmark is cleaner, safer, and far more responsible than conventional alternative. That's a direct quote setting their standard.
Okay, let's talk about the plant itself. Hemp. Why hemp? I mean, lots of plants can make fiber. What's special about hemp for this safer and cleaner goal beyond just being local?
Well, the sources highlight a couple of key things. First, how it's grown. It's considered low impact, needs much less water than cotton, for example, and it can grow pretty well without needing tons of pesticides or herbicides, which is a big environmental plus. It's also good at capturing carbon from the atmosphere while it grows.
Okay, so the farming is more sustainable.
Right. And second, the actual chemistry. The cellulose you get from hemp is apparently very high quality for making these kinds of fibers.
It's fascinating, isn't it? We're going back to this really ancient crop, but using it for something so futuristic. I saw a quote in one source calling it the plant of 1,000 uses.
Yeah, that really captures it. We see hemp in food, construction, paper, all sorts of things.
That versatility must be useful, right?
Yeah.
It means the crop isn't just banking on one single market.
Absolutely. And that versatility is critical if you want to build an entire industry, not just, a small niche product.
Yeah.
Lawson's goal, as stated, isn't just making a fiber. It's creating a whole new Canadian manufacturing sector based on this specific hemp fiber. Trying to reverse that decades-long trend of sending textile production overseas and instead create valuable jobs locally, linked right back to Canadian farms.
That sounds like a huge undertaking. I mean, textile manufacturing mostly left Canada years ago. Do the sources give any hints about the practical steps? Building that kind of infrastructure must be massive.
They do touch on it, and this is where the combination of sort of place and process really matters. They're leveraging existing agriculture for the hemp itself, but the real innovation comes in the processing stage, which brings us nicely to the science bit. The technology they're using.
Right.
Because growing a green crop is one thing, but processing it cleanly is another challenge entirely. So let's dig into that. Pairing Canadian hemp with the Lyocell process.
Most people, when they hear regenerated cellulose, might think of viscose or rayon. And those have let's say, a complicated environmental history. What makes Lyocell different? Why is it the key?
That's a crucial distinction. Older processes like viscose often use pretty harsh chemicals like carbon disulfide. They can be really polluting, lots of wastewater, chemical runoff, not great. Lyocell is fundamentally different. The sources confirm Zylotex is using a specific version that's environmentally sound. It's a closed-loop system. Okay, closed loop. What does that actually mean in practice? Basically, it means they take the hemp cellulose, dissolve it using a non-toxic organic solvent, and then turn that solution into fiber. But here's the closed-loop magic. More than 99% of that solvent isn't thrown away. It gets captured, cleaned up, and used again for the next batch.
Ah, okay, so very little waste.
Exactly. It drastically cuts down on wastewater use emissions compared to those older methods, you don't have the toxic wastewater problem that plagued traditional rayon production. So the tech is what really backs up the cleaner claim. And Zylotex is combining that clean tech with a very specific source, Alberta-grown hemp.
The sources say they're the first Canadian company looking at Alberta hemp for Lyocell. Is that just about local pride, or is there more to it?
It seems to be a core part of their strategy. Using Alberta hemp gives them, obviously, a secure domestic supply chain, less vulnerable to global disruptions, but it goes deeper. It ties into their whole approach to resource management. They're explicitly aiming to be leaders in. The term they use is valorizing agricultural and wood waste.
Valorizing. Okay, let's break that down. Sounds a bit jargony.
Yeah, it does a bit. But it just means taking something usually seen as low-value waste and, well, finding a way to make it valuable. So think about the parts of the hemp plant that aren't the main fiber, or maybe leftover stuff from other crops. Usually that might get thrown out or maybe burned or used for something basic like animal bedding.
Right. Agricultural residue.
Exactly. Zylotex is saying, hold on, we can take that residue, that agricultural byproduct, and technologically transform it into a premium, high-value input for textiles. And this has another big benefit. It takes pressure off forests. A lot of traditional regenerated fibers come from wood pulp.
Right, which can lead to deforestation.
Precisely. So by using hemp, especially potentially the waste parts, Zylotex offers a scalable alternative. It helps solve the textile sourcing issue and the agricultural waste issue. It's that kind of circular thinking, connecting the farm to the factory locally.
That integrated model definitely sounds powerful, but it requires real commitment. And speaking of commitment, Zylotex seems to be putting policies in place too. The sources mention their ancient forest-friendly and next-generation solutions policy. Why specifically call out ancient forests?
That's a very strong signal, especially to buyers in the fashion and textile world. As we just touched on, many conventional fibers like viscose do rely on wood pulp, sometimes sourced unsustainably from endangered or ancient forests.
Okay, so it's a guarantee. It's basically a guarantee. By adopting this policy, Zylotex is publicly pledging our raw material, hemp, does not come at the expense of these critical forest ecosystems. They're committing to only using sustainable next-gen feedstocks, like agricultural residues, not virgin forests. Okay, so they're drawing a clear ethical line. But policies are one thing. Making this commercially real is another. How quickly are they moving? Is this still just an idea, or is it becoming an industrial reality?
The sources show definite movement towards commercialization. They've entered into an exclusive joint development agreement, or JDA, with a company called Plante Technologies.
And why is that significant, a JDA?
It's a big step. JDAs like this usually mean they're pooling resources and expertise to scale up the technology faster than they could alone. It helps bridge the gap between the lab and actual factory production. It suggests they're serious about getting this hemp-based Lyocell to market. And we even have a date for that agreement, May 13th, 2025, so just recently. It indicates they're not waiting around. They're moving from Lelia Lawson's initial research phase into a serious industrial scale-up effort, trying to be a first mover, really.
So putting all this together, the local hemp, the clean tech, the policies, the partnerships, what's the bigger economic picture here for Canada? We started with the environment, but the sources seem to argue there's a strong economic benefit too.
Oh, absolutely. The stated aim is, quite clearly, to boost Canada's textile industry. And importantly, we're likely not talking about cheap, basic textiles. They're creating advanced, high-value materials using a domestic resource hemp, which potentially has lower input costs than, say, importing wood pulp from overseas. So it could increase the value extracted from Canadian agriculture and build a new layer of sophisticated manufacturing here. It's trying to link economic growth directly with environmental responsibility.
So if you had to summarize the aha moment from digging into these sources, what would it be? What's the key insight for you?
For me, it's the sheer integration of the whole approach. It's not just one piece, not just the hemp or just the lyocell or just the Canadian focus. It's the combination. Using what might be considered agricultural waste, applying this really clean, closed-loop processing technology, and building it all within a secure, traceable domestic supply chain, from the Alberta field right to the finished fiber. That whole package aims to fundamentally change the way we even think about sourcing materials for textiles, moving away from a linear, often polluting global model towards something much more circular, local, and hopefully truly sustainable. Okay, let's wrap this up then. For you listening, the key things to take away from our deep dive into Zylotex are pretty clear.
First, there's the intentional shift away from traditional materials like wood pulp or oil-based synthetics towards locally sourced Alberta hemp, a potentially lower impact feedstock. Second, the absolute centrality of the lyocell process, that clean, closed-loop technology, is what makes the environmental claims credible. And third, the commitment underpinning it all. From Lelia Lawson's initial vision to concrete policies like the ancient forest-friendly pledge, aiming for a truly responsible Canadian textile industry.
Yeah, and maybe a final thought to leave you with. The core idea here is creating high value from something previously overlooked agricultural residue. So if Zylotex can potentially build a whole new domestic industry making advanced materials this way, it really pushes us to ask, what other waste streams are out there? Think about municipal waste, other types of farm waste, industrial byproducts. Could similar approaches, smart, high-tech processing combined with a focus on local resources, transform those waste streams into valuable materials too? Could that model help tackle both resource scarcity and sustainability challenges far beyond just textiles? That concept, turning trash into treasure using technology and localized systems, that seems like a really powerful idea worth watching.